Welcome to this month's webinar over emergency action plans. Emergency action plans are one of those policies that you hope you never ever need to use. However, it's one of your best methods to pre-plan in the event of an emergency. It helps your employees as well as you know what your role is in the specific case or scenario that you're dealing with. As part of the emergency action plan, one of the most important questions you can ask yourself is, do you know what to do? That is, during different kinds of emergencies, what is your specific responsibility? Another question you should know the answer to is who to call. So depending on the type of emergency, whether that's a fire or explosion or a vehicle accident, who are you going to call and inform them or activate first responders to attend? And the last thing you should know is where to go in the different types of emergencies. So what's at the heart of your emergency action plan? Obviously, it's the different types of emergencies that you may have. These can be classified into several different categories, the first being, of course, an employee getting hurt. So this may be anything from a minor bump or bruise all the way up to a concussion or worse. Next could be a fire or an explosion type hazard, depending on the type of business you are involved in, whether or not an explosion is possible. Next would be a vehicle accident. Vehicle accidents are probably going to be more of the most common types of emergencies you're going to have in your business, which a lot of times can and will involve an employee injury as well. The next one is a severe weather type hazard, or this could be, a tornado, it could be a flood, it could be an earthquake, lots of different types of severe weather that old Mother Nature herself presents. And finally, the one that we never want to have in the workplace is, of course, workplace violence. However, we do need to plan and prepare to deal with that as it comes up. So we've established what our different emergencies are. Now what do we do? Obviously, we have to remember to remain calm and activate the emergency responders. We have to get them on the way. Somebody with more expertise than what we have needs to be dealing with this. Second, we need to sound the alarm, whether that be word of mouth, our two-way radios, an intercom, or if we do have an alarm system within the workplace, we need to activate it. And finally, evacuate yourself as well as others to the headcount or muster point. So what exactly is a headcount area or muster point? That's the place that you're supposed to gather where the individual who is in charge of the headcount area ensures that everyone is accounted for. So we're not sending first responders in after someone who had either gone home or is actually at our headcount area. We know that everyone is accounted for, or if someone is missing. It's also extremely important to have a secondary point if the first point is not easily accessible because of the type of emergency. So as we're evacuating to our muster point or headcount area, we need to be sure that we're getting our trained personnel or EMTs, first responders, anybody that's trained in first aid and CPR or somebody that's got a lot more expertise than what we do to the injured person or to the emergency taking place. We also need to take that time to notify the general manager, the main office, maybe our first line supervisor is unaware of this emergency that's taking place right now, and we need to notify them at that point in time. We also need to take that time to notify anybody else that needs to be aware of this emergency and be sure to inform them of what's going on and give them more information going forward. Maybe now's the time to begin developing a response to the media or a media statement saying exactly what you know thus far, because you know if it's serious enough they will be there to ask questions. So as we're going through and making these emergency notifications, we need to be sure that we know what our emergency phone numbers are. These emergency phone numbers need to be placed near each phone. That way you always know where they are, and depending on where the emergency is, you can go to a different phone and be able to access those phone numbers. They need to list all applicable emergency phone numbers depending on any type of emergency you may have. That way you can pick and choose from that list and not have to filter through different types of lists to get to the emergency numbers you need. You also need to have an emergency employee notification list. So basically a next of kin list, or who do we contact in case you are hurt at the workplace. Do we call your wife? Do we call your children? Do we call your brother or sister or parents? Or who do we call and let them know that you are on your way to the hospital? Or who do we call and say you are fine but you are helping in the emergency? One element that's often overlooked in the emergency action plan is fire extinguishers. That could be their use, where they're located, or basically just ensuring that they are good and in your workplace. These must be inspected monthly as well as annually by an outside company. When you go through, you're not just looking at the dial and ensuring that it's in the green portion of the dial, but you're also ensuring that the pin's in place, it's hung up on the wall, and it's not set on the floor or set on a shelf where it could be knocked over. You want to make sure that they're clean and able to be used in an emergency. You need to know where they're located, and you also need to know how to use one. When you're using a fire extinguisher, remember the acronym PASS. Pull the pin, aim it at the base of the fire, squeeze the handle, and sweep back and forth at the base of the fire. Be sure to spray what is on fire and not the flames. The other thing to remember with fire extinguishers are the 5 types of fires, and each extinguisher is labeled for the type of fire. There's A, B, C, D, and K. A is for ordinary combustibles, so your wood, paper, plastic. B is for flammable liquids. C is for electrical fires. D would be a metal fire. And K, of course, is for a kitchen fire. D and K are more specialized extinguishers, and typically nowadays you'll see A, B, C fire extinguishers being used in the workplace. Really what we're talking about in an emergency action plan is for everyone to know their role for the different type of emergency. This can only be done by reviewing your specific emergency action plan as a group and with your entire workforce. Now would be a prime opportunity to take and review your emergency action plan with all of your employees so that everyone knows where to go, what to do, and what their responsibility is. Thank you for taking the time to watch this webinar over emergency action plans. Remember, if you have any questions or comments or need just some general help in developing your own emergency action plan for your facilities, do not hesitate to call your KFSA or Ag Service Risk Manager.